SG Wong 513 asks, hope to see a video on how to use GraphQL with Solid.js. So that's what we're going to do today on this blue collar coder. So happy to have you here. That's what you get when you write in the comments sometimes, is you get a video dedicated to the topic that you want. So keep writing in those comments. I read each and every single one of them. So what we're going to do in this video is build a to-do app using GraphQL and also Solid.js. We're going to do queries. We're going to do mutations. We're going to do subscriptions. That means real-time updating. It's super cool. And if you're like, but Jack, I don't know, to-do example, don't worry about it. There's a twist at the end. You're going to love it. Stick around. And of course, in the meantime, if you like the video, hit that like button. And if you really like the video, hit that subscribe button and you'll be notified the next time a new one of these videos comes out. But in the meantime, of course, let's jump right into it. Okay, I'm going to head over to my terminal. I'm going to go over into that TMP directory and I'm going to do solid GQL. That's going to be the name of our project. There you go. Let's bring up VS Code. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is bring up a terminal. And then I'm going to do a make directory and I'm going to go server. But I'm also going to go over to my web browser and find the solid documentation, which is linked to in the description. And I'm going to grab the dgetter for the TypeScript template. And I'm going to pop that in there. And I'm going to call this client. And I'm going to say, when that's done, tell me by saying pull done. Okay. Cool. And now let's go over into our server directory. And in there, I'm going to do yarn init -y. And then I'm going to add a bunch of packages for TypeScript. Yarn add TypeScript and TS node in development mode. And then I'm going to do yarn add GraphQL yoga. That's what I'm going to be using. Yoga, not Yoda, which is what I'm going to be using to build our server. Let's go over here and take a look. Looking pretty good so far. Okay, now I'll do npx tsc init. That'll give me a tsconfig file. And I'm going to create my server. So I'm going to touch index.ts. It's going to give me my server index.ts file. So now over here, I'm going to do import GraphQL server from GraphQL yoga. Awesome, that was easy. And I'm going to start by having a list of to-dos. So I'm going to say let to-dos equals, and then it's an array. And I'll come up with a structure on the fly for this. We'll say ID is 1, and the text of it is learn GraphQL plus solid, and then done is false. Okay, cool. So now we need a schema for our server. So I'm just going to bring in one that I've already done, paste it in here. This is going to be the type def for this. So we have a type def for a to-do. It's got that ID done and that text that matches our definition here. And then we've got a get to-dos, which lists the to-dos as an array. That's how you specify that in GraphQL. And then we need a set of resolvers. So these are basically the functions that are going to go off and get that data. So within query, we're going to have get to-dos, and it is going to just return that list of to-dos. Thank you much. GitHub Copilot, that is awesome. You did a good job on that one. Good Copilot. And then we need to start up a server. So let's go do that. Const server equals new GraphQL server. That's pretty good. Let's give it the type defs as well as our resolvers. Very cool. And then we'll start it up. There you go. Server's running on localhost, and let's add an HTTP there. So let's try this out. Let's do npx ts node index.ts, and we'll click on this and see what we get. All right. So I'll go over here and put in query. I'll do get to-dos. I'll add in ID. And then done, and then text, and see what we get. Easy peasy, lemon squeeze, look at how fast that is. Okay, so before we get into bringing in a big old library into our Solid.js app, let's go and take a look and see what this is actually doing. So anytime I run this, it's making a request, and we can actually look to see what this request is. So here's our operation name. We're doing a query on that, and We can see that the result over here is in the response. That's just the data that came back. And I think people think that they need necessarily a big old GraphQL library to make all this work. You do not need to do that. So all you need to really do is go over here to copy and then do copy as fetch. And that'll give you the code that you can use to make that fetch off the client side. So let's make a new file here and just do paste. And you can see that all you need to do is just do fetch. Local is 4,000. Here's some headers. You can get rid of most of those because those are just the basic headers of the browser applies to everything. And then really the important part here is that body and that method. And so when people think, oh my gosh, GraphQL, it must be an entirely new system, blah, 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 blah. It's not. It is just like basic REST. The only thing is that the way that you query it or run mutations on it is normalized, which is actually really good. Okay, so let's get rid of this. And then we'll go over and see how our solid GQL is doing. Okay, cool. All right, looks like our solid GQL has failed. Let's try this one more time.
Well done.
Hey, there you go. Okay, I don't know why I didn't do that first time. Client, and then we'll do yarn. Okay, great. Looks like that's going. So let's do yarn dev over there. And that's going to bring localhost 3000. That's going to be our solid.js app. So we are going to use a library, and that's mostly because we're going to use subscriptions. And subscriptions are actually a little bit more complex than just the fetching thing, so it's good to have a library. And the one that we're going to use is Urkel. So why are we going to use Urkel and not Apollo? Well, Apollo is actually hardbound to React, whereas Urkel actually has the Urkel core, which is agnostic to any Vue framework. So that's going to be the one we're going to be using. It's super easy. So let's jump back over into here and then do yarn add urql core. There you go. Okay, let's restart the app. And then I'll go over to the client side. We'll do app.tsx. And then over here, I'm just going to start paring this down. We'll get rid of the logo and the styles. Get rid of all the contents in here. Cool. We go back over to our index.css and we'll just make everything big by adding font size large on everything. Bring it in from the sides, margin rem 1, good, awesome. Let's take a look. Nothing in there, that's great. Let's go back over to our app.tsx and say, hello. Nice, nice and big, look at that, awesome. Okay, cool. So the first thing we wanna do is go and build a client. So we're gonna need to bring in create client from the Urkel core. And this is actually pretty easy. All you gotta do is just say const client equals create client, and then you give it a URL. So the URL in this case is the 4000, but minus the GraphQL. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So now we need to go run that query to go and get the to-dos, right? So the next thing we need to do is bring in create resource from solid.js. So I'll do that, create resource from solid.js. And that's going to give me to-dos. And I'll do create resource. And to do that, I'll do client query. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Cool. And close that up. And I'll say to promise because it's not a promise by default. Not sure why that is, but that's okay. And then let's go back over to our playground. Make this slightly less absurdly large. And then copy that out of there. Paste in our query here. So our query will do that get to dos and return all this data. Nice. And then one more thing I want to do on top of this is going to come back with, well, let's actually take a look at that. So then data, let's just do console log on that, on what we get back. So we're going to get back data. And I just want to have us know what that is. So let's go back over here to our solid app. And it looks like we're missing GraphQL. So let's go and add that. Okay, cool. Let's go over into our inspector, see what shows up in the console. We get an object back. Our object has get to-dos, and it's an array of to-dos. Crazy cool. And a misspelled solid. Nice. We'll fix that in a bit. Okay, so let's go back over here. And I'm going to return out of here then the data.getToDos. And that's going to be an array of those to-dos. So let's bring in 4 because we're going to want to iterate through those. For each of the to-dos. Okay. And then within each one of those, we're going to get, oh, look at all that. That's cool. All right. So we'll make a div in there. Sure. All right. And let's see. Okay. And we want to do an input type equals checkbox. Yep, that's good with a done. And then we want a span of the text. Nice. All right, cool. Let's take a look. That's great. Okay, cool. So we're well on our way. Now we need an input field where we can add a new to-do. So let's go and add that. We'll put in a div and we'll create an input field, type equals text, and a button for add. And then we'll do a value in there, which would be something along the lines of text, I would say. And that's going to be a signal. So we need to go create that. Now we could create that locally if we wanted to. Let's try that out. Let's use that first. Okay, text and then set text. Not use state, my friend. We are in solid, so let's create signal. All right, I'm gonna bring that in like so. Cool. And let's see, button needs an on click, which is gonna do add or on add. And on add is gonna be this. And we are going to do like a set. We're going to make that mutation call to go and add something, but then we're going to go and set the text to blanks. And then I'm going to need to go over here and update that value. So I need to say on input. And when that fires, it gives me an event. And then from that event, I need to do set text with the event current target value. Scroll everything back in here so we can see it. Yeah, okay, so we have on input. We're going to set our text. Very cool. And so we make this, hit add, and away it goes. Cool. So it looks like we're good. We could even check a little bit further by just doing div and then text. Now as I type, that should pop up. Perfect. Great. Okay, great. So now the next thing we need to do is go back over into our server and add that mutation. So we've got our query currently. So let's bring in a mutation. So we got a mutation, there's add to do, and then that takes a piece of string and then returns a to do, and also set done, which takes an ID, and then a done, and then we'll set the value of that done. So let's go add that into our server, mutation, and then add to do. Cool, nice, good looking. Okay. And from there we want to do to-dos dot push, and then we'll give it, yep, there you go. The ID is a string with the to-dos length +1. That makes sense. The text is what we get from the input, and then done is false because we haven't done anything yet with it. Now we do want to return that. So let's go over here and create a new to-do. New to-do, cool, we'll paste that in. And then we'll return that to-do. Awesome, nice. And we need to specify this in TypeScript. So that's a text, which is a string. Nice. And this is just, we'll just say that's unknown because we don't need it. So there you go. Now, okay, that looks good. Let's now do set done. That's right. Okay. Wow. Actually, that's really good. GitHub Copilot. So let's see, what is it doing? Well, it's finding the to do with the right ID. If there's none, then it's going to throw an error. It's going to set that to do and then return that to do. All right, looks pretty good. So let's save this out and then restart our server. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna do get to-dos and then we'll create a new tab. We'll say that this is a mutation and we are gonna add to-do and we'll just give it text of foo. And with that, we want the ID. There we go. That comes in as ID number 2. If we go back here to get to-dos, now we'll see that we have an extra to-do that has foo in it. And we can even, I think, go back into our solid app. And there you go. We got foo. How cool is that? All right, great. So let's go over into our app and actually see how this is done in code using Urkel. So we want to make this now an async call. And we're going to do, there we go, await client mutation. So we need a mutation in there. So let's go and copy that in from our playground. Paste that in. And let's see, what else do we need? Well, we need variables. So we're going to pass it the text. And so in order to get that all the way through, we need to do a little bit of GQL magic and say that we have a $text, which is a type of required string. Very nice. And then we're going to use that $text down here in our add text. All right, and that text needs to be the value of text. So let's put that in there. And then we also need this to be a promise. So let's make sure that that's a promise so we can await it properly. Let's try it over here. Let's do bar, add, and then refresh, and we show up. Awesome. So now the next thing we need to do is make sure that we go and refetch the data. So we'll go back over here to our resource, and we'll add in refetch. And then all we need to do is, once that's done, we refetch. And there we go. Cool. Awesome. So let's go and add on a click handler here. And that's going to call toggle with the ID. Don't have a toggle yet, so let's go and add a toggle. Again, async with the ID as a string, and it's toggle. Cool. And now let's go do that await client, and let's do a refresh. Sure. Okay. Did I get the name wrong? I think I did. Yeah, toggle. Okay, cool. All right, so the mutation, this one is set done. And it's going to be on that ID. And that's going to be an ID is an ID. And then the ID is down here as $ID. And then we also have done, which is going to be $done. And $done is a Boolean. Nice. Okay, cool. And so for that done, we need basically the inverse of what we got. So yeah, there we go. So we need to find the current list of to-dos, get that done off there, and then invert it. And then we need to get the value, not the reference. Okay, cool. And here we go. All right, let's give it a try. So if I click on foo, yep, it's set. And it's permanently set. So every time I hit refresh, good to go. All right, so that's cool, but what we really want to do is we want to get into real-time stuff. We want to use a subscription so that when to-dos changes, we automatically see the update in the UI in real time. And imagine if multiple people were working on the same list of to-dos, everyone would see the updates. Really cool, right? So let's go over and first update our GraphQL server to get that going. So I'll close out all this. Then we'll bring back the GraphQL server. And here we're going to bring in pub/sub. We're going to define ourselves a channel name. We'll call this to-dos channel. Yeah, sure, that works. And we'll create a new pub/sub like that. And now we got to go and kind of stream it through the whole system. So to do that, we need to go back down to the server and then give it some context where we give it pub/sub, just like that. And then whenever we make a change, we need to let people know. So we need to bring in that context. And context is the third item here. You get sort of your parental context here, you get your arguments, and then you get the overall context as a third argument. So let's paste that into add to do as well. And what we really need to do is when this happens, we just need to basically go and publish a change. So we can just say pub/sub. Publish, and then we say to-dos channel, and all we're going to do is just give the current list of to-dos. So every time we change anything, we just publish the whole list back out. There's a lot of different optimizations you could do for this, but I think this is probably the most straightforward. Okay, cool. That looks good. Now we need to actually allow things to subscribe. So we need to create a new thing called subscription, and we'll say, we'll just have a list of the to-dos. You need to subscribe to the list of to-dos, like that. And then down here, after mutations, we go and add subscription. To-dos. And then within to-dos, we have a subscribe. Yeah, and that's pretty good. So let's actually try this out. All right. Let's go over here to our GraphQL playground and close out that tab. Go over here. And now we'll create a new tab with a subscription. And we'll just subscribe to the to-dos. Done. And text. And now you can see that it's listening down here. So we'll know if it works if I go over here and I hit mutation and I click that. And then, wow, that's crazy. So when I hit add to do over here, this one fired and gave me the new list of to-dos. Automatically. That is so cool. So before we go into the client code, I do want to add one more thing to the subscribe. What I want the subscribe to do is basically when you subscribe, we automatically send you the current list of to-dos as part of you subscribing. So you get kind of the initial set right away. So I'm going to capture that output as iterator. And then I'm going to do that publish. And then I'm going to return that iterator. And now let's rerun this. And I'll go back over here and then hit subscription. Right. And then the moment that I subscribe, I get a first set of to-dos. So that's really easy. It'll make the client code just a little bit cleaner. Okay, let's go over to our client now and go into the source. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is stop the server, and we need to bring in two new libraries. So I'm going to yarn add, and I'm going to bring in a library called subscription transport WS. So subscription, which be our subscriptions, transport meaning transport of the data, and then WS meaning WebSockets. And then also a library called Wonka, which is underneath all that. So, okay, looking good. Let's rerun. And now I'm going to go bring in from that subscriptions transport, I'm going to bring in subscription client. And then from Wonka, I'm going to bring in pipe and subscribe. And now down in the client, I'm going to go and alter the exchanges. So within Urkel, there's kind of a middleware system, and it's called exchanges. And it's the kind of thing that you need to do to make sure that you can get the data coming in from the WebSockets into that client. A little weird, but okay. So the first thing I need to do is create a subscription client. Basically points at the same thing except for WebSockets on localhost at the same address. So WebSockets localhost 4000, and it automatically reconnects. And then I'll go bring in the exchanges stuff as part of the client configuration. So we got the default exchanges, we got our subscription exchange, and then we're going to forward data coming in from that subscription client into the base GraphQL client. But we need the subscription exchange and the default exchanges, and both of those come in from the Urkel core. Default exchanges and also subscription exchange, just like that. Cool. And now to get the data, we first need to put it somewhere. So I'm going to go and create a list of to-dos and also set to-dos as a signal. But it needs to be defined as something. So we'll make an array of to-dos, but we don't know what a to-do is yet. So we'll go and create an interface for that. To-do, which is an ID of a string. Done as a Boolean, and text as a string. Cool, nice. And we don't need this guy anymore, so let's get rid of him. What we do need to do is subscribe to the channel. Now, because I'm a horrible typist, I'm actually just going to bring this in. So here we go. So we have a pipe that has the subscription on it. That subscription is very similar to what we did over in our sandbox over here, our playground. There's our subscription. It's exactly the same thing, except we name it here. I don't think you even need to do that. And then once we subscribe, then anytime new data comes in, then we set that list of to-dos to what we get from the subscribe. And now let's go down here and get rid of refetch, and let's try this out. Okay, solid out, refresh, foo, boom, done. And I didn't actually have to go make that secondary call to do the refresh. In fact, the only actual real REST calls at this point are these two mutations for toggling the state and also on add. Oh, hold on, got to get that refetch out of there too. So there's two refreshes I need to get rid of. Let's make sure. Bar, nice. That is so cool. And let's go over here and actually see if that's really working. I'll create another tab, 3000, and Baz, hit add, and there you go. So now both of these tabs are updating simultaneously. Let's even go and do a split screen, make it even cooler. All right, you ready for this? Can't beat that. Okay, so I mentioned we're going to do a twist on this. I'm just that crazy, and I like SG Wong enough to do this. So let's do this. Let us go and actually take this entire example and then repurpose it into a chat app really quickly. It's really exciting. And the reason I want to do this repurpose of this code is because you should understand, as potentially a junior engineer who's watching this, how to do three things. One, to Google things when you run into problems. That's really, really important. Lots of folks talk about how important Googling is, and I second that. The second is how to read code. It's very important to understand how to read code and get the most out of it. And the third thing is to be able to look at a piece of code and say, oh, I see the underlying mechanics of this piece of code are similar to my problem, just with different terms. And so I can repurpose this code to a new solution. So in this case, what do we have? Well, we've got an ability to manage an array with real-time subscriptions, which is an array of to-dos, but that sounds an awful lot like a chat message system. So can we do that? Well, let's give it a try. Let's see how fast we can repurpose this into a chat app. I'm going to go and close my VS Code, go back over here to my temp directory, and then I'm going to go and copy that solid GQL to solid GQL chat. And then I'm going to go into solid GQL chat and bring up VS Code. All right, so let's go and bring up the server first and see what I need to do there. Okay, so this is going to be a chat channel. This is going to be messages, and we'll start off with no messages, and we'll just have ID as number or a string. Text is going to be a string, and then we'll have a from, so that it'll be from someone. And we don't have anything in there to start with. Cool. All right, great. Let's see. So we now have a chat message instead of a to-do. And we'll just say add text and then from. And then this is messages and messages. Cool. All right, that's looking pretty good. So it's just, we got a chat message, ID done in text, but that's not right. It's from a string. Cool. Text, great. Query, messages, awesome. Mutation, great. Looking good. So now we need, I call them chat messages. Cool. And that's actually just messages. We don't have a set done. We do have that, and messages and messages. Okay, that looks good. And then on our add, we're just going to say add, and it's going to be text and also from. Which is a string. And let's see, a new message has the old chat messages dot length. All right. No, it's just messages. Okay. Messages. And let's see, from, there you go. And that's new message. Great. And we're going to push it in there, and then we'll return the new message. And this guy needs to be an array. And this is just messages. Okay, so let's take a look. So messages returns messages. That's great. Now we've got an adder, which takes a text and a from, creates a new message, pushes that into that messages, publishes on the chat channel, and returns the new message. Awesome. You got a subscription, does everything we did before, and away we go. Okay, great. Let's create two windows, and we'll go into the server, and then we'll do npx ts node index.ts to start that server. Looks like we're still got a to-do in there somewhere. Oh, there we go. One last one. Okay. Cool. Now we're running on 4,000. Call this messages. From. Okay, cool. Okay, so I think we can now go over and start hacking on the client. So let's go and repurpose our client to turn it from a to-do app into a chat app. Okay, so now everything I think here is okay. So we'll have a chat message, matches what we had before, but we need a from, which is a string. Call this messages and set messages. Have it be an array of chat messages. We don't need that to-do sub, but we do need a subscription to messages and from. And then we do set messages with the messages result. It's looking pretty good so far. Okay, so we got our text. We also need a from. So we need the person to be able to say who they are. Set from. And we'll say that this is Jack. We're not going to need a toggle. We are going to need an on add, which would do add. And text is fine, but we also need a from. And let's see, so we also need to add on from. Cool. And so we'll keep the from, but we'll set the text to nothing. And then we'll go through our messages. And here we will do a side-by-side thing of spanning from with the text. This isn't going to look great, but it'll work great. You can go and style it up with Tailwind or something, make it look very pretty. All right, and then we need two text fields, not just one. We need a from. And we'll set that from. Now let's see. I think this is actually pretty good. So let's try it out. All right, so we'll go into our client, do yarn dev. And we'll bring up that localhost 3000. Nice. Okay, Jack says, hi. Oh, that's cool. All right, let's go over and create another instance. Jack says, hi. Sally says, yo. And there we go. Let's check it out. Yeah, awesome. So we can even, we can make it a little nicer here. We could say like from text, something like that. Yeah, nice. Very cool. All right, SG, I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned how to connect your Solid app with a GraphQL server, not just with queries and mutations, but also with subscriptions. Really cool stuff. Of course, for everyone else, in the meantime, if you like this video, please feel free to hit that like button and also click on the subscribe button if you want to see more videos just like this one.